The bell above the door at Gus's Corner Diner rang the way it always rang on a Tuesday afternoon in Ashford Falls, Tennessee. Small, brass, slightly flat in the middle note. Ray Callahan had heard that bell so many times over the past 11 years that he could have told you by ear when the door was opened by a regular and when it was opened by a stranger. He was 57 years old, 6'2", 230 pounds, with shoulders that had been carrying weight of one kind or another since he was 19 years old and had signed the papers that sent him to Fallujah. His beard had gone white at the corners of his mouth and at one spot along his jaw where a piece of shrapnel had taken skin and the skin had grown back without the pigment. His leather vest was worn soft at the shoulders, and the patches on the back told a story that most people in a small Tennessee town did not particularly want to read. Hell's Angels, Ashford Falls Chapter, Road Captain, Veteran. He was not the kind of man children ran toward. He settled onto his usual stool at the far end of the counter, the one closest to the wall, the one where his back was never exposed, and Meg, the afternoon waitress, slid a mug of black coffee in front of him without being asked. Meg had stopped asking him what he wanted about 7 years ago. She was 61 years old, wore reading glasses pushed up into her gray hair, and had a granddaughter who had recently taken up the trumpet, a subject Meg talked about with the weary pride of a woman who loved a child very much and also lived next door to them. "Slow day," she said. "Slow's good," Ray said. "Mm-hmm." She moved away. Ray took a sip of his coffee and looked out through the front window of the diner at the late September light. The afternoon had that particular gold to it that meant the days were getting shorter, even if the heat hadn't caught up to the calendar yet. Across the street, the hardware store was doing its slow Tuesday business. A man in a brown jacket was loading bags of mulch into the back of a pickup truck. A woman with a stroller was standing at the corner waiting for the light to change. Everything was ordinary. Ray had learned in Iraq that ordinary was the thing you learned to notice. Ordinary was where things hid. Ordinary was the street you walked down 12 times, and on the 13th time something was different by half an inch, and the half an inch was the thing that killed you. So Ray sat with his coffee and looked at the ordinary and let his eyes do what his eyes had been trained to do, which was to catalog without appearing to catalog every face and every angle and every small wrong thing. He saw the man across the street 15 seconds before the bell above the door rang. Gray jacket, dark jeans, baseball cap pulled low. He was standing in the shadow of the awning from the used bookstore next to the hardware store, and he was standing very still in the way that people stand still when they don't want to appear to be standing still. His hands were in his pockets. His weight was on one foot, and his eyes, from what Ray could see of them under the brim of the cap, were fixed on the front door of Gus's Corner. Ray took another sip of coffee. He did not look at the man directly. He let his eyes slide past him, register him, move on. His mug went back down on the saucer with no particular sound. His shoulders did not change. His face did not change. But somewhere underneath his ribs, something that had been quiet for 11 years had woken up. The bell above the door rang. Ray did not turn around. He heard footsteps. Light. Quick. Too quick to be an adult's footsteps, too determined to be random. Not the footsteps of a child coming in for ice cream. Not the footsteps of a child dragged in reluctantly by a tired parent. These were the footsteps of someone who had been running and had decided to stop running and was now moving with the careful urgency of a small animal that has found a place to go to ground. And then something solid and small collided with his left leg, and two tiny arms wrapped around it so tight his coffee mug rattled on the saucer. Ray looked down. A little girl, 6, maybe 7, Brown hair pulled into a ponytail that had partly given up on itself. A navy blue backpack with a small silver unicorn clip hanging from the zipper. Sneakers with little stars along the sides. A face, God, that face pale as paper and tight with something that Ray recognized immediately because he had seen that exact face on soldiers who had gone somewhere inside themselves that they could not find their way back from. Pure animal fear wearing the skin of a child. She did not look up at him. She pressed her face into the side of his leg and said in a whisper so small it almost did not exist, "Please, please don't let go of me, please." The diner stopped. Ray felt it happen without looking. The couple by the window who had been arguing quietly about a grocery list. The two older men in the corner booth who had been doing what older men in diners do, saying the same things to each other that they had been saying for 40 years. Meg, who had been refilling coffees 3 stools down. All of them in the space of one breath went still. Ray set his coffee mug down carefully, as if it were the most important object in the room, and the world depended on him setting it down without a sound. Then he shifted very slowly on the stool so that his body was turned slightly toward the child. Not looming, not leaning, just turning, just being there. "Hey," he said. His voice came out lower than he intended, rougher. He cleared his throat, tried again. "Hey, I got you. I'm not going anywhere." She did not let go. If anything, she tightened her grip. "What's your name?" he said, a long pause, then barely audible from somewhere near his kneecap, "Lily." Ray nodded slowly as if that were the best answer he had ever heard in his life. "I'm Ray," he said. "Lily, can you look at me for a second? Just 1 second. You don't have to let go." Slowly, painfully slowly, she tilted her head back. Her eyes were a deep brown, almost black in the afternoon light, and they were doing the particular thing that eyes do when a body is trying very hard not to cry, that wide, fixed, unblinking stare that takes everything in and holds it. Ray looked into those eyes, and something in his chest, something old and calcified and very carefully defended, cracked right down the middle. He did not show it on his face. "Did somebody scare you?" he said. Her chin trembled. She nodded once, sharp and small. "Okay," Ray said. "Okay, I'm going to ask you a question and I want you to answer me honest. Can you do that?" Another nod. "Is somebody following you right now?" A tiny breath held and released. "Yes." "Man." "Yes." "Gray jacket." Her eyes got wider. "How did you know?" Ray looked past her, casual, unhurried, the kind of glance that would not read to anyone watching as anything more than a big man looking around a diner. His eyes tracked through the front window. The man in the gray jacket was still there. He had shifted position about 4 feet to the left, and he was now partially hidden behind the corner of the awning, but his face, the part visible under the brim of the cap, was still pointed at the door of Gus's corner. Ray looked back at Lily. "He been following you long," he said. 6 blocks, she whispered. "From school. I kept trying to walk faster, and he kept getting faster, and I didn't know what to do, and I saw the diner and I came in, and I'm sorry I picked you. I didn't know where else to go." Ray put one enormous hand, scarred, ink-stained, from 20 years of small sailor tattoos, collected across 3 continents, on top of her small head, not pressing down, just resting, steady. "You don't apologize for that," he said. "Not ever. You picked right." Lily looked at the hand on her head, then up at his face. Something in her eyes shifted. The terror did not leave. It was still very much there, sitting behind everything else. But something else moved into the space beside it. Something smaller. Something like the first breath after a long time underwater. Ray turned his head slightly toward the counter. Meg, he said, his voice was low, perfectly even. Meg was already there. She had not needed to be called. She had been reading the situation from 12 feet away, and she had read it accurately. Meg had seen a lot of things across a lunch counter in 4 decades of work. She knew which kind of quiet meant bring a menu and which kind of quiet meant call the sheriff. "What do you need?" she said. "Gus's phone, the one in the kitchen. Call the sheriff's office, non-emergency line. Ask for Deputy Nathan Brooks if he's on shift. Tell them Ray Callahan needs a deputy at Gus's corner quiet. No lights, no sirens. Stick it inside so as not to make a show." Meg's eyes flicked once to the front window, back to Ray, back to Lily. "On it," she said, and she was gone. Ray turned back to Lily. "You want to climb up on this stool next to me? You can see the whole diner from up here. And the door. Nobody gets past me without going through me first. That's a promise." She hesitated. Her arms were still tight around his leg. "Up to you," he said. "No rush." She unwrapped herself, slow as a scared animal, and climbed up onto the stool. She had to work a little to get up onto it, and Ray did not offer to help because he understood, without being told, that this was a child who needed to do something herself right now. Any small thing, just so that her body could be reminded it still had the ability to choose. She sat with her back straight and her backpack in her lap and positioned herself so that the small of her left arm was pressed against the outside of his right forearm. Not clinging, just contact. Ray picked up his coffee mug. He took a sip. He set it down. "You want a hot chocolate?" he said. She looked up at him. "With the little marshmallows?" "I have no idea," Ray said, "but we're about to find out." Something moved across her face that was not quite a smile. It was close, though, close enough that Ray felt it in his chest like a small victory. He raised 2 fingers toward the pass-through window where Gus himself was already watching the situation. Gus was 64, a Navy man from a long time ago, and a person who understood exactly what 2 fingers meant when they were raised by Ray Callahan on a Tuesday afternoon. He moved to the hot chocolate machine without a word. Lily said, "Ray, yeah, he followed me this morning too." Ray went very still. "This morning," and he repeated, "at the bus stop, before school. He was across the street. I thought he was waiting for the 14 bus. It goes downtown. But the 14 came and he didn't get on." "How long did he stand there?" "I counted to 200, she said. "Then the school bus came and I got on. I looked out the back window and he was still there." Ray looked at this child, 6 years old, ponytail half undone, stars on her shoes, counting to 200 while a man who should have been on a bus stood across the street and watched her. "And after school," he said, "he was there again. At the corner of Pine and Sycamore, 2 blocks from the gate. He started walking when I started walking. I stopped at the crosswalk even though the light was green. He stopped too. That's when I knew it wasn't an accident." "You knew." "Mom says if something feels wrong, it is wrong. She says your stomach knows before your brain does. And my stomach knew." Ray absorbed this. He processed it the way he had once processed briefings before patrols, not with his emotions, not yet, but with the part of him that had been built for exactly this. He built the geometry of the afternoon in his head. A bus stop, a school, 6 blocks, a diner. This was not a man who had seen a little girl walking home and decided in that moment to follow her. This was a man who had known where she would be. This was a man who had been waiting. "Lily," Ray said. "Yeah. When you came in here, why did you pick me?" She looked at her hands. She took her time with the answer. He liked that about her already, the way she did not rush into words, the way she turned each question over to see what was on the bottom of it. You look like you weren't afraid of anything, she said, and you were sitting by yourself. I didn't want to bring trouble to someone who already had their family with them. Ray stared at her. He had heard a lot of sentences in his life. He had heard them under mortar fire, and he had heard them in hospital rooms, and he had heard them whispered at his daughter's grave on a hill in Kentucky 15 years ago, in a wind so cold it had cracked the skin on his lips. He had never heard a sentence quite like that one. 6 years old, and she had made a choice in a diner in the middle of being hunted by a grown man, and the choice she had made had not been about her own safety. It had been about not making anyone else's family smaller. Your mom raised you right, he said, and his voice was rougher than before, and he did not bother to clear it this time. She raised me by herself, Lily said. My dad left before I was born. Mom says we're a complete team, just the two of us. She's right. We are. Gus set the hot chocolate down in front of her without a word. It had marshmallows. It had one more marshmallow than a normal hot chocolate would have had. Gus caught Ray's eye, and Ray gave him a single small nod, and Gus moved away. Lily wrapped both hands around the mug and brought it close to her face and inhaled, and for exactly 1 second her eyes closed. The bell above the door rang. Ray felt every muscle in his body arrive at the surface at once. He did not turn. He did not move. He looked instead at the chrome of the napkin dispenser on the counter, and in its warped reflection, he saw the shape of a man in a gray jacket entering the diner. The man paused in the doorway. He scanned the room. His eyes found the little girl at the counter. They stayed there for exactly 1 second too long. Then he walked to the far end of the counter, 4 stools down, and he sat. Coffee, he said to Meg. His voice was trying to be casual. It was almost there. It was 1/10 of an inch off. Black. Lily's hand found Ray's forearm. She did not grab. She just placed her small fingers against him, light as a leaf. Ray put his hand over hers. It covered her whole hand and most of her wrist. Tell me about school today, he said, as if the entire universe had not just reconfigured itself 4 stools down. Lily took a breath. We started a unit on dolphins, she said. Her voice came out level controlled. If Ray had been surprised before at how quickly this child could read a situation and play it, he was simply amazed now. I'm doing my project on orcas. Orcas, Ray said. They're actually the largest member of the dolphin family. People call them killer whales, but that's a misnomer. Is that right? They can communicate across miles of ocean, and they have the second most complex social structures of any animal other than humans. They stay with their mothers their whole lives. Ray looked at this child who had just used the word misnomer in a complete sentence and who was 4 stools down from the man who had been hunting her through the streets of Ashford Falls, giving him a small, perfectly composed lecture on the family structure of marine mammals as a form of psychological warfare. Smartest thing I've heard all day, he said. In the reflection of the napkin dispenser, the man in the gray jacket was not looking at his coffee. His eyes were angled sideways, using the mirror of the diner window the same way Ray was using the chrome. Ray had been doing this for 20 years. The man had maybe been doing it for 2. Ray cataloged him. Late 40s, maybe 6 feet, thin through the shoulders in the way of men who did not work with their hands, but who were wiry from a life of movement. There was a tattoo just visible on the back of his right wrist, peeking out from under the sleeve of the gray jacket when he picked up his coffee cup. Ray looked at that tattoo for 2 full seconds. Then he looked away slow and even so that nothing on his face would betray what his eyes had just recorded. A snake, wrapped around a dagger, the ink old, the style unmistakable. Ray had seen that tattoo before. Not on this man, on another man. A man he had helped put in a federal prison in southern Illinois 7 years ago when the Ashford Falls chapter had worked with a St. Louis chapter on a missing girl case that had turned out to be much, much bigger than a missing girl case. That tattoo belonged to a crew that had called themselves the Serpents of the Cross. The leader's name was Marcus Vance. Ray felt the floor of his stomach drop out by about an inch. He did not show it. Lily, he said, same voice, same tone. In about 2 minutes, a deputy is going to come through that door. When he does, I want you to stay right where you are. Don't look at the man 4 stools down. Don't look at the deputy. Just keep drinking your hot chocolate and keep talking to me about orcas. Can you do that? Yes, she said. Good girl. She kept drinking. Her hand stayed on his forearm. The old men in the corner booth had stopped talking. Ray could see them in his peripheral vision. One of them, Walt Henderson, 82 years old and a man who had flown transport planes out of airfields in places that no longer appeared on maps, was watching the man in the gray jacket with an expression that Ray had seen on the faces of exactly one kind of man. The kind of man who had survived things by paying attention. Walt caught at Ray's eye for half a second. His jaw moved once. Acknowledgement. Ready. Ray gave a single minimal shake of his head. Stand down. I've got it. Walt looked back at his coffee, but his hand, Ray noticed, had moved to rest beside the ceramic sugar dispenser, which was heavy and made of solid glass and weighed approximately 3 pounds. The bell above the door rang. Deputy Nathan Brooks came in this way a good officer enters a room. He had his hat in his hand. His duty belt was clean. He walked like a man who had stopped in for coffee, and his eyes moved across the room the way eyes move when a person is deciding where to sit. His eyes found Ray in under a second. Ray did not move. Brooks was 29 years old and had been with the Ashford Falls Sheriff's Office for 5 years. He had grown up 2 counties over. His grandfather had been a Marine. His wife had just had their second child. And he was, in Ray Callahan's considered opinion, one of the best young officers in the state of Tennessee, because he understood without being told that the loudest thing in a room was rarely the most dangerous thing in a room. Brooks did not walk toward Ray. He walked toward the far end of the counter. He settled onto a stool 2 down from the man in the gray jacket. He nodded at Meg. He ordered coffee. He looked at his phone as if he were reading a text. The diner returned to a version of normal, except the man in the gray jacket had gone very, very still. Orcas live in pods, Lily was saying. Her voice was steady, but she had shifted half an inch closer to Ray's side. The pod is led by the oldest female. They call her the matriarch. All the other whales listen to her, even the big males. Smart arrangement, Ray said. The matriarch knows where all the food is. She remembers where her mother showed her, and her mother's mother. That's how they know where to hunt, even when the ocean changes. Memory. Memory is their map. Ray watched the chrome of the napkin dispenser. Brooks had set his phone down. He had his coffee in front of him. He was not looking at the man in the gray jacket. He was looking at the back wall of the diner at the chalkboard that listed the day's pie specials. Sir, Brooks said, conversational easy. Couldn't help overhearing. You new in town. The man in the gray jacket did not answer for a full 2 seconds. Passing through, he said, business or pleasure? Business. What line? Another pause. The man's hand tightened fractionally on his coffee cup. Sales. What kind? Industrial supply. Brooks nodded slowly, picked up his coffee, took a sip. You happen to know if the parking on this block is metered or timed? Couldn't find a sign. No, gee. You been here before? No. Brooks set his cup down. Sir, he said. The tone had not changed, but something underneath it had. I'm going to need you to step outside with me for a minute. The diner compressed. Every person in that room, Ray could feel it without looking, had stopped moving at the same moment. The man in the gray jacket did not move for 3 seconds. What for? He said. Just a quick word. I didn't do anything. I didn't say you did. Another second, and then another, and then the man in the gray jacket turned his head very slowly toward the other end of the counter, to the place where Lily Morgan was sitting on a stool drinking her hot chocolate, and he looked at her for exactly 1 second before his eyes slid over and found Ray Callahan looking directly back at him. Ray did not move. He did not say anything. He just held the man's gaze with the flat, patient stillness of a man who had already decided the outcome of this conversation and was simply waiting for the other person to catch up to it. The man in the gray jacket looked away first. He stood up. Fine, he said. Brooks stood. He did not touch the man. He did not crowd him. He just walked toward the door, and the man in the gray jacket walked after him. The bell above the door rang. The door closed. Through the front window, Ray watched Brooks's posture change the moment they cleared the threshold. Two more deputies arrived from the side where they had been parked half a block away out of sight. The man in the gray jacket put his hands behind his head without being asked. His wrists were cuffed. He was loaded into the back of a patrol car. Inside the diner, nobody spoke. Then Lily said very quietly, "Is it over?" Ray looked at her. "That part's over," he said. She absorbed the careful wording and said nothing. The door of the diner opened. Sergeant Wade Dillard came in. Dillard was 54, built like a brick chimney, and had been with the sheriff's office since before Brooks was born. He took off his hat as he entered and walked directly to Ray. "Mr. Callahan." "Sergeant." Dillard looked at Lily. His face did the small gentling that good officers' faces do when they were looking at children who have been through something. "Young lady," he said, "my name's Wade. I work with Deputy Brooks. Is it okay if I ask you a few questions?" Lily looked at Ray. "You don't have to if you're not ready," Ray said. "I'm ready," Lily said. Dillard pulled a notebook out of his shirt pocket. He clicked his pen. And Lily Morgan, 6 years old with a ponytail half out of its rubber band and hot chocolate on her upper lip, gave him a statement so precise, so complete, so painfully exact in its detail that Dillard had to stop twice and simply look at her in order to verify that he was in fact taking testimony from a first grader. When she had finished, Dillard closed his notebook. He looked at Ray. "I'd like to step outside for a minute," he said. "Mr. Callahan, would you mind?" "Lily," Ray said. "I'll be right there through that window. You can see me the whole time." "Okay." He followed Dillard outside. The late afternoon air had gone cool. The shadows had lengthened across the parking lot. 2 patrol cars were there now. A third was pulling in. "Ray," Dillard said. He had dropped the mister. "We've had him on a watch list for 3 weeks. Ray said nothing. 2 other reports, Dillard said. Different neighborhoods, different schools, girls roughly the same age as Lily. He never got close enough to identify. Descriptions didn't quite line up, never had a face. Until today. Name, Ray said. Raymond Pruitt, goes by Rook, 44 years old. Priors in Missouri and Arkansas. Unlawful surveillance. 1 charge of attempted abduction that got pled down to something else. He paused. We're pulling his phone right now. It was in a bag in the passenger seat of his car. Which is parked where? 2 blocks east, behind the old feed store. He walked in. Ray absorbed that. A man who parks 2 blocks away and walks in is a man who is planning to leave in a hurry and who does not want his plate seen. Sergeant, he said. Yeah. His tattoo, the right wrist. Dillard's eyes sharpened. You saw it. I saw it. Snake. Dagger. Serpents, Ray said. Dillard was quiet for a long moment. That's what I thought too, he said finally. I was gonna call you about that in any case. We'll know more in an hour, but I'd bet my pension that is not a coincidence. Ray looked through the window of the diner at a little girl on a stool who was talking seriously to a waitress about the structure of marshmallows, and who had no idea yet that the man who had followed her for 6 blocks was an operative of an organization that Ray Callahan and the Ashford Falls chapter had last tangled with 7 years ago in a case whose lead witness had been a young woman from St. Louis, a young woman whose name Ray could not for the life of him remember at this moment, but whose face he was going to remember the instant he saw it again. Sergeant, he said, tell me about the girl's mother. Diane Morgan, 34, teaches 4th grade over at Ridgeway Elementary. Single mother, been in Ashford Falls about 7 years. She's on her way here now. 7 years. Mm-hmm. From where? Dillard paused. He had been a cop for 30 years. He understood the question underneath the question. I'm going to pull her file, he said. Give me an hour. Thank you, Sergeant. Ray? Yeah, you're thinking what I'm thinking. Ray looked at him. I'm thinking, he said, that a 6-year-old girl had not just happened to be chosen by the cousin of Marcus Vance in the town of Ashford Falls, Tennessee, on a Tuesday afternoon in September. Dillard exhaled through his nose. Yeah, he said, that's what I was afraid of too. Ray went back inside. Lily was sitting on her stool, kicking her feet slightly, talking to Meg about the marshmallows. Meg was listening with the full and complete attention that a woman gives a child when the woman has understood in her bones that the child has been through something the child should never have been through, and that the only thing to do about it right now is to listen as if nothing in the world were more important. Ray sat down on the stool beside Lily. She looked at him. He's in the car, she said. It was not a question. He's in the car. He's not coming back. He's not coming back. Good, she said. And then the bell above the door rang, and Lily's face did the thing that children's faces do when the person they have been waiting for without realizing they had been waiting finally arrives. Mom, she said. Diane Morgan came through the door like a woman who had been holding her breath for the length of a 4-mile drive. She was smaller than Ray had pictured her, not by much, just enough to be surprising. Dark hair, a little curl to it at the ends. A school lanyard still around her neck. A green cardigan buttoned one off. Eyes red at the rims, dry at the corners. She had cried already in the car. She had made herself stop before she walked in. She saw Lily. She crossed the diner floor in 4 steps and dropped to her knees right there on the tile, and her daughter went into her arms, and Diane made a sound that was not a word. It was something underneath language, something a mother makes when she has spent the last 20 minutes driving through a version of the world in which her child did not exist and is now finally allowed to put that version away. Ray looked at his coffee mug. He gave them 30 seconds. Then he looked up, and Diane Morgan was standing in the middle of Gus's corner diner with her arms around her daughter and her eyes on him. And in the moment that Ray saw her face square on and in clear afternoon light, for the first time, something moved at the back of his memory. A hospital waiting room. A St. Louis cop who had been up for 30 hours. A photograph of a woman in her late 20s who had just agreed to testify in a federal case against a trafficking operation run out of a truck yard off Interstate 70. A photograph that had come across the chapter's table when they had helped provide informal security for that witness's relocation 7 years ago. Diane Morgan. Except 7 years ago, her last name had not been Morgan. Ray stood up very slowly. Ma'am, he said. You were the one, Diane said. Her voice shook on the last word. Lily said a big man at the counter, a biker. You were the one. She did the hard part, Ray said. I just didn't move. She said you bought her a hot chocolate. I did. She said you know about orcas. I've been told. Diane looked at him, and something in her face Ray saw it happen in real time traveled from gratitude to confusion to something harder and colder, the exact sequence of a woman whose brain had just caught up to what her eyes were telling her. She knew him. She did not know from where yet. She was working on it, but she knew him. And underneath her arms, pressed against her side with her whole small weight, Lily was saying, Mom, his name is Ray. And he said Tuesday, which means he'll be here next Tuesday, which means I can tell him about the project. And also I think he should meet you properly because he saved me. Diane looked at Ray. Ray looked at Diane. And in that moment, in the ordinary gold light of a Tuesday afternoon, in an ordinary diner in Ashford Falls, Tennessee, with a patrol car out front and a man named Raymond Pruitt in the back of it, and a tattoo on the man's wrist that connected to a name that neither of them had spoken out loud in 7 years. Ray Callahan understood that the story of this afternoon is not the story he had thought it was. And it was not finished. It was in fact just starting. Fact. Outside, Sergeant Dillard was on his radio. A third patrol car was turning onto the street. The hardware store across the way had closed early, its owner standing on the sidewalk with his arms folded, watching. Inside, Meg was quietly pouring a fourth cup of coffee. And Lily Morgan, 6 years old, looked up at the man she had chosen and the woman who had made her. And she said with the particular clarity of a child who has decided the world is going to make sense whether the grown-ups are ready for it to or not. Can we get pie? Ray almost smiled. Yeah, he said, we can get pie. The bell above the door rang one more time, and the long evening began. The kitchen of the Morgan house sat at the back of a narrow 2-story on Bellflower Lane, a street of modest frame houses built for mill workers in the 1940s and passed down through 3 or 4 owners each. Diane had bought it 6 years ago with the money from a settlement she had never talked about at a price that had been reasonable because the roof had needed work and the previous owner had smoked indoors for 30 years. She had stripped the wallpaper herself. She had painted the kitchen pale yellow. She had put a bird feeder outside the window above the sink, and she and Lily kept a running list on the refrigerator of every bird they had identified, which by Ray's quick count that Wednesday evening stood at 37 species. Ray Callahan was sitting at her kitchen table. He had not been in a woman's kitchen in a long time. He was aware of the strangeness of this without dwelling on it. He held a glass of water. He was wearing his vest. He had asked permission before sitting. The chair under him was a kitchen chair that had been reupholstered by someone who had cared about it, and it was holding his 230 pounds with only the smallest complaint. Lily was upstairs. Diane had asked her to go take a bath and then read in her room, and Lily, who had been trained for 6 years by a mother who did not negotiate when her voice went into that particular register, had gone. Diane sat across from him. She had taken the school lanyard off. She had buttoned her cardigan right. She had washed her face. And now she was looking at him the way a woman looks at a man when she has spent the last 18 hours putting a puzzle together and has realized that one of the pieces is sitting at her kitchen table. You were in the hallway, she said. Ray nodded slow. Outside the conference room in the St. Louis Federal Building. December of 2018. December 18th, Ray said. I remember the date because it was 3 days before my birthday, and I had told my chapter I'd be back in time for the ride. Diane was quiet for a moment. You were standing with 2 other men, in leather vests, same as you have on now. That would have been Gus Thornton and a brother named Walt Henderson. You might have seen Walt today. He's one of the old men who sits in the corner booth on Tuesday afternoons. He was there. He was there. Diane closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. I thought you all were security for the building. No, ma'am. We were informal support for the relocation process. The St. Louis chapter called our chapter because they'd worked with us on a missing person case the year before, and they trusted us to move a witness without leaving a trail. The U.S. Marshals did the formal protection. We just made sure nothing happened on the drive down to Tennessee. You drove me down. Our chapter did. I wasn't in the vehicle. I was in the hallway at the federal building when they walked you out. I remember the hallway, Diane said. Her voice had gone quiet. I remember because I was terrified and I had just signed papers I did not understand, and the marshal had told me I was not allowed to keep the name I had grown up with. And when we walked out of the conference room, there were three men in leather vests standing in the hallway. And I thought for a second that they were there to hurt me. And then the marshal said, "They're with us." And one of you nodded at me. Just once. Not a word, just a nod. That was Gus. I didn't know it was Gus. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, that nod was the first thing in about 6 months that made me feel like maybe I was going to live through this. Ray looked at the water in his glass. He had not expected to be told this. He was not entirely sure what to do with being told this. He was aware dimly that his chest was doing the thing it had been doing on and off for the past 26 hours, which was cracking at a seam he had not known was there. "Ma'am," he said. "Diane. Diane, I didn't know you were the witness we moved. Not today. Not when you walked into the diner. Your hair is different. You're using different last name. And 7 years is a long time." "I know. But when I saw you, I knew I'd seen you. And when you were kneeling on the floor of the diner holding Lily, I put it together." He paused. "I didn't say anything about it in front of the sergeant. I thought you should know first." "Thank you. There's no reason to thank me for that." Diane put her hands flat on the table. She looked at them. There was a small white scar along the side of her left index finger that he had not noticed in the diner and that he now understood he was going to remember. "So now we have to talk," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Diane. Diane, yes. His name is Marcus Vance," she said. "I'm going to say it out loud because I have not said it out loud in 7 years. And I think if I am going to sit at a kitchen table with you and have this conversation, I need to say his name." "Go ahead." "Marcus Vance. I remember him. He ran a trucking company out of a yard off Interstate 70. The company was real. It hauled produce from the Mississippi Delta up through the Midwest. The trucks were real. The drivers were real. Most of the drivers had no idea." She paused. "Some of the drivers did." "I know. They moved girls, mostly girls, some boys, between 12 and 19. They moved them from rural places to cities and from cities to other cities. They had a network. They had handlers at rest stops and at diners along the interstate and at motel chains that asked no questions." "I remember. I worked in the office. I was 27 years old. I had gone to college for 2 years and dropped out when my mother got sick. I did bookkeeping. I thought I was doing bookkeeping for a trucking company." She stopped. She swallowed. "I was doing bookkeeping for a trucking company. It just turned out that some of the entries in the ledgers did not correspond to any produce I could identify." Ray waited. "I went to a friend from church. She had a cousin who was a state trooper. That trooper sent me to the FBI. I wore a wire for 4 months." Her voice was completely flat now, the way a voice gets flat when it is saying something it has said in its head 10,000 times. "They arrested 41 people. Marcus Vance was the #1 name on the indictment. He got 50 years, no possibility of parole before the first 30. "I remember the sentence," Ray said. "I did not testify at the trial. The tapes were enough. But my name was in the indictment. My face was on one of the affidavits. I got into witness relocation. They moved me to Tennessee. I gave birth to Lily 6 weeks after I got here. Ray's head came up. 6 weeks. Lily's father was one of the men I recorded, Diane said. I did not know I was pregnant when I agreed to wear the wire. I found out 8 weeks in. I did not tell the FBI. I finished the job. I had Lily here in Ashford Falls in the county hospital under the name Diane Morgan, and I have raised her by myself for 6 years, and she does not know any of this. Ray sat very still. He had been in rooms with worse information in his life. He had been in rooms with information that had changed the shape of what he thought the world was. But he had not been in a kitchen with information of that specific weight in a very long time. Her father, he said carefully, is serving 32 years in a federal facility in Terre Haute. He has no visitation rights. He has no parental rights. He signed them away in exchange for a reduction. He does not know Lily exists. The FBI has kept it that way. And Vance knows I testified. Vance does not, to my knowledge, know about Lily. He knows about you, though. Yes. And his cousin just followed Lily for 6 blocks through Ashford Falls. Diane put her face in her hands for exactly 3 seconds. Then she took her hands away, and her face was composed. Yes, she said. Ray drank a third of his glass of water. He put it down. He thought about the chrome of a napkin dispenser and a tattoo on the back of a wrist. Diane, he said, I want to say something, and I want you to hear it before I say anything else. Because I'm about to say a lot of things, and I don't want you to get lost in them. Okay. What happened yesterday was not your fault. It is not a consequence of anything you did wrong. What you did 7 years ago was the bravest damn thing I have ever heard of, and I've heard of a lot of brave things. 41 arrests, 7 years in a small town raising a kid on a teacher's salary with a new name and no family around you. And you did it alone. Diane's eyes got bright. She did not let them go further than bright. I did not do it alone, she said. I had a whole federal system behind me. You did it alone, Ray said. The federal system moves paperwork. You raised a child. She said nothing. All right, Ray said. Now, the second thing, Pruitt. My chapter has been on the phone with 2 people since about 7 this morning. We have a contact at the Bureau in Knoxville. We have a retired state investigator who did a lot of work on the Vance operation after it got rolled up. Both of them have told us the same thing, and after Vance's arrest, a piece of the operation did not go away. It fragmented, it scattered, but there was a small group of people, family members mostly, who stayed loyal to Vance and who have been working on the outside for 7 years with one goal: finding me, finding the witness who put him in. They've been looking for 7 years. Yes. Why now? Why here? Why my kid? We don't know yet, Ray said, but we'll know. I want to be honest with you. We have a working theory, and I want to walk you through it, not because it's confirmed, but because it affects what you decide to do next. Go ahead. Vance has a parole hearing in the spring. March 10th, it's his first hearing. He is not going to make parole, but the hearing itself creates a set of filings that are publicly available, and one of those filings lists the jurisdictions where your relocation was initially discussed. Tennessee was on that list. It's on that list because a previous defense lawyer tried to argue that if the witness was in Tennessee, she should have been deposed there, which would have delayed the trial. It did not work, but the filing is on the record, and Vance has seen it. Vance's cousin has seen it, Pruitt's phone, which Sergeant Dillard's people have been going through since last night, has a folder of PDFs of court filings that goes back 5 years. Pruitt has been mapping your likely location from Tennessee County to Tennessee County. He has a spreadsheet. Ashford Falls was not the first town he came to. It was the fourth. The fourth, Diane said. The fourth. So for 3 months, at least. Diane stood up from the table. She walked to the sink. She put her hands flat on the counter on either side of the sink. She looked out the window at the dark where her bird feeder is. She did not say anything for a long time. Ray did not say anything either. He had learned a long time ago that when a person is looking out a dark window and not saying anything, the kind thing to do is to let them look. Finally, she turned around. "What do you need from me?" she said. "Nothing tonight. Tonight I need you to lock your doors and keep your phone by your bed. Deputy Brooks has a car parked at the end of the block. It will be there all night. Tomorrow I need you to meet with Sergeant Dillard and a federal agent whose name I will give you in the morning. They will go over options with you. One of those options will be a second relocation. I'm not moving Lily again. That's your call. She has a life here. She has friends. She has a teacher she loves. She has Tuesdays." Her voice caught on that last word. She let it catch and she kept going. "She has Tuesdays, Ray." "I know. I will not uproot her again. I will not." "Then you won't. But I want you to meet with them anyway, because even if you stay there are decisions to make." "About what?" "About the chapter." Diane looked at him. "I don't understand." "My chapter has done private protection work before," Ray said. "Not for money, not officially. We've stood up for people who needed standing up for. My guess is that the sheriff's office is going to put a car on your house for a week, maybe 2, and then the resources are going to get pulled because there are only so many deputies. My chapter has 9 members. We can rotate a man on your street 24 hours a day for as long as it takes." "For as long as what takes?" "For as long as this isn't over." Diane stared at him. "You would do that?" "I already volunteered it. The chapter voted last night. It was unanimous." "Last night?" "After you left the diner, I called Rickon. He called Gus. Gus called Walt. By 9 o'clock, everyone was on the phone. It was a short meeting." Diane turned her face away. She pressed the heel of her hand against her eye. "I don't know what to do with that," she said. "You don't have to do anything with it," Ray said. "You just have to tell us whether you want it." She turned back. Her eyes were wet, but she did not let them spill. "Yes," she said. "I want it." "Okay." "Ray." "Yeah. I need to know something." "Ask." "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" "Because I have been alive long enough to know that no grown man does something like this without a reason, and the reason is usually somewhere in his own history. And I am not going to be able to accept this kind of help from you until I understand where it comes from. So tell me, please." Ray looked at his glass of water. He thought about the drawer in his kitchen. He thought about a hill in Kentucky. He thought about 11 letters he had not answered. And he thought about a 6-year-old girl who had said, "I didn't want to bring trouble to someone who already had their family with them." "I had a daughter," he said. Diane did not move. "Her name was Emma. She was 8 years old. I was in Iraq on my 3rd tour. My wife was driving her home from a piano lesson on Route 42 outside of Bowling Green, Kentucky. They were hit by a drunk driver at 6:15 in the evening on April 9th, 2010. Emma died at the hospital 3 hours later. My wife died the following morning." Diane said nothing. "I came home for the funeral. I stayed for about a year. I was not a good person to be around during that year. Then I got on a bike and I rode for about 11 months. I came through Ashford Falls in the late summer of 2012. Gus Thornton was running the diner. He gave me a cup of coffee. I came back the next day. I have been here ever since. Ray, I have not let myself near a child in 15 years, Diane. I have crossed streets to avoid the elementary school. I have sat at the counter at Gus's Corner every Tuesday for 11 years, and I have never sat in a booth because booths sometimes have families in them. I have structured my life around not being in the same room as anyone small enough to remind me of her. And yesterday. And yesterday, a 6-year-old girl ran into the diner and grabbed my leg and said, "Please don't let go of me." And I looked down and I did not move. Diane's face did a thing that Ray was not going to be able to describe to himself later in words. That, he said, is where this comes from. I am not doing it for you. I am not doing it for Lily. Or if I am also doing it for me. Because for 15 years, I have been telling myself that the only thing I was good for anymore was staying out of the way of people who were still living. And yesterday, a child told me, without using any words, that she did not agree with that assessment, and I have been thinking about it ever since. There was a long silence in the kitchen. "Okay," Diane said finally. "Thank you. You don't have to thank me. I'm going to thank you anyway." Okay, she sat back down across from him. She picked up her own glass of water. She drank half of it. She put it down. "Ray," she said, "yeah, I am going to tell Lily about Marcus Vance, not tonight, but soon. She is going to ask me questions in the next few days that I am not going to be able to answer honestly without telling her, and I would rather she hear it from me than find it out in some other way. Because this child finds things out. She does. When I tell her, I would like you to be here." Ray looked at her. "Ma'am, Diane. Diane, that's a big ask. I know. I'm not her family. You are a man she trusts. I have watched her with exactly 3 adults who are not me in the last 6 years. I trust her judgment more than I trust most grown-ups. She trusts you. That is not a small thing." Ray was quiet for a long moment. "Okay," he said. "Thank you. Don't thank me." "I'm going to keep thanking you, Ray. I've had 7 years to get good at saying thank you and meaning it. You're going to have to get used to it." The stairs creaked. Ray and Diane both looked up. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway in pajamas that had small orcas on them. Her hair was wet. She was holding a book with her finger holding her place. "Is it okay if I come in?" she said. "Of course, Bug," Diane said. Lily walked to the table. She stopped beside Ray's chair. She looked up at him. "I just wanted to check," she said, "that you were still here." "I'm still here." "Okay." She turned and walked back toward the stairs. "Lily," Ray said. She stopped. "Yeah, your mom and I were just talking about some things. Grown-up things. She's going to tell you about them in a few days. You may have some questions then. You can ask me any of them." "Okay." Lily looked at him with the particular serious expression of a child who has understood more than she is being told and is filing it away for later. "Okay," she said. She went upstairs. Diane looked at Ray. "She's going to be thinking about that," she said. "I know." "Oh, well," Diane said, and she almost smiled. "Welcome to parenting by committee." Ray looked at his glass. He did not say anything, but his chest did the thing again. The cracking thing. The next 3 weeks moved the way weeks move when a town is holding its breath. The Ashford Falls chapter of the Hells Angels put a man on Bellflower Lane 24 hours a day, and they did it with a professionalism that would have surprised anyone who had not spent time around the chapter. They parked 2 houses down in civilian vehicles. They rotated on a 4-hour schedule. They checked in with Deputy Brooks every shift. They did not speak to the neighbors. They did not look at Diane's house when Diane was leaving it. They simply existed in a state of quiet readiness, and after the first week, the neighbors stopped asking about them, and after the second week, the neighbors started waving. Ray took the Wednesday and Friday nights himself. He parked down the block. He drank coffee from a thermos. He watched the street. At 3 in the morning, he walked one full loop around the block. At 4, he walked another. He slept during the day. He had done this kind of work before in places hotter and less hospitable than a September night in Ashford Falls, Tennessee, and his body remembered how. Pruitt was arraigned on a Thursday. The tattoo had been confirmed as belonging to the Serpents of the Cross. His phone had yielded a folder of surveillance photographs that the FBI was still processing 3 weeks in. He was denied bail. His public defender, a tired man in his 50s named Alvin Kretzer, tried one procedural motion that was denied and then settled in for what everyone in the room understood was going to be a trial. On the Tuesday of the second week, something happened. Ray was at Gus's corner at his usual time. Lily was beside him. She had a new pencil and a small spiral notebook, and she was writing in it with great concentration. She had not told him what it was. Diane came in 20 minutes later, the way she had started doing every Tuesday. She had taken the 5th grade reading group. She had left the school. She had walked the 4 blocks from Ridgeway Elementary to the diner. And she had Ray notice the moment she came through the door a particular tightness in her face that she had not had when she left home that morning. "Diane," he said. "Hi, Bug," she said to Lily. She sat. Meg poured coffee. Diane waited until Meg moved away. "Ray," she said quietly. "What?" "I have to tell you something, not in front of." "Finish your coffee," Ray said. "We'll step outside." Lily looked up from her notebook. "Mom," she said. "Yes, Bug." "I can tell when you and Ray are talking about things you don't want me to hear." "I know you can." "It's okay, I'm writing." She went back to her notebook. Diane and Ray went outside. They stood on the sidewalk. It was cool. The leaves on the maple across the street had started to turn. "FBI called this morning," Diane said. "Vance has been moved." "Moved where?" "From Terre Haute to a medium security facility in southern Kentucky." Ray felt the ground under him shift by a quarter inch. There was a medical issue. He reported chest pain. They ran a cardiology workup at the Indianapolis VA. The workup cleared him, but because he had flagged a medical issue, the Bureau of Prisons moved him to a facility with a cardiac unit, which happens to be closer to a specialist. "Closer to here." "Closer to here." Ray looked down the street. The chapter's Wednesday car was at the end of Bellflower Lane. It was not Wednesday. It was Tuesday. Somebody else was supposed to be there, but somebody else was not there because somebody else was not this specific street. "Diane." "Yeah. There's no cardiac problem." "I know there's no cardiac problem." He faked a medical issue to get moved closer. The Bureau does not believe that. The Bureau does not know what we know. "No, is she? How close?" 60 miles from here, right over the state line." Ray closed his eyes for 1 second. "All right," he said. "Ray." "Yeah." "The FBI agent on the phone said something to me this morning that I do not know what to do with." "Tell me." "She said they have new information. She wouldn't say what. She said she wants to meet in person. She's driving in on Thursday. She said to bring you." "Me?" "You by name." "I'm not on the case." "She knows." "How?" "I don't know, but she knows." Ray was quiet for a moment. "All right," he said. "Thursday." "Ray." "Yeah. Whatever this is, it's bigger than we thought. It was always going to be." Meaning, meaning Pruitt was one man. The Serpents at their peak had maybe 40 active members. The network Vance ran when it was in full operation ran product through 11 states. You didn't take them down. You took down one node, a big node, but one. Diane said nothing. Whatever the Bureau has, Ray said, is probably the rest of the node, and probably a reason it has reactivated, and probably a reason your daughter was walking to a library on a Tuesday afternoon with a grown man 6 feet behind her counting his steps. Okay, I'm going to make some phone calls tonight. Okay. They went back inside. Lily was still writing in her notebook. What are you working on, kid? Ray said. Lily looked up. I'm writing down what I remember, she said. About the man, Pruitt. Everything I remember. I thought if they need more things for the trial, maybe I can remember things now that I didn't remember last week. I'm writing them all down so I don't forget. Ray looked at her. He looked at Diane. Diane had gone very still beside him. Can I see it? Ray said carefully. Lily turned the notebook around and slid it across the counter to him. It was 6 pages long. Every line was filled. In neat, careful first-grade handwriting, with the occasional misspelling, Lily Morgan had documented everything. The time she had first seen Pruitt at the bus stop, the direction he had been facing, the color of his shoes, the fact that his shoelaces did not match, one was brown and one was dark gray. The fact that he had a watch on his right wrist even though he was right-handed, which her mother had once told her was a thing people did when they wanted to pretend to be left-handed. She had noted that he had looked at his phone 4 times in the span of 2 minutes at the corner of Pine and Sycamore, and had described each time the motion of his thumb as he scrolled, and had concluded in a sentence that Ray would not be able to forget even if he had wanted to. I think he was waiting for someone to text him where I was going because he never looked up at the street. He only looked up at me. Ray looked at Diane. Diane's face had gone white. She's 6, Diane said. 7 in November, Ray said automatically. Lily, Diane said. Her voice was very gentle. How long have you been writing this? Since last Wednesday. Every day. At lunch and before I go to bed. Not on weekends. I didn't want to mess it up by writing when I was tired. Sweetheart, this is... I know it's a lot, Lily said. I can stop. No, Diane said. No, don't stop. Lily, this is going to help a lot of people. You know that, right? Yes, Lily said. That's why I did it. Ray sat at the counter of Gus's Corner Diner with a notebook full of observations written by a 6-year-old child in a hand that made his chest hurt, and he understood, not for the first time in the past 3 weeks, that he had underestimated Lily Morgan in every way that it was possible to underestimate a person. He closed the notebook gently. He slid it back across the counter to her. Lily, he said. Yeah. Can I ask your mom if I can keep a photograph of every page in here? Mom, Lily said. Yes, Diane said. Yes, please. Ray, Lily said. Yeah. I wrote something else too. At the back. What did you write, honey? I wrote what I'm going to say in court. Ray and Diane looked at each other. You don't know if you're going to court yet, Bug, Diane said carefully. I know, Lily said, but I thought I should practice, just in case. I wrote it down and I've been reading it at night. She turned to the back of the notebook. There was one page. In careful handwriting, a 6-year-old girl had written, My name is Lily Morgan. I am 6 years old. On September 19th, a man followed me for 6 blocks. He was not my dad, and he was not my uncle, and he was not a stranger who got lost. He was a man who knew my name because I heard him say it once under his breath at the corner. I am not afraid of him now because I am not alone anymore. I have my mom. I have Mr. Ray. I have the police. I have my teacher. I am telling you what he did because he should not be allowed to do it again to any other child. That is all. Thank you. Ray read it twice. He did not say anything for a long time. Honey, Diane said, and her voice was wrecked. Honey, where did you learn to write like that? I wrote it like Mr. Ray talks, Lily said. Short sentences, just the facts. Mr. Ray says that when something is true, you don't have to dress it up. Ray looked at Diane. Diane looked at Ray. She wrote it like you, Diane said. I heard, Ray said. Okay, Diane said. Her voice broke on the word. She put a hand over her face. Ray put his hand very carefully on top of Diane's free hand where it rested on the counter. He did not say anything. He just left his hand there. And Lily Morgan, 6 years old, closed her notebook and picked up her hot chocolate mug and said with the particular satisfaction of a child who has finished a piece of serious work, "Can we get pie now?" On Thursday, the FBI agent came. Her name was Elena Brennan. She was in her late 40s, small with the intent, economical movements of a person who did not waste a gesture. She sat in Diane's kitchen, the same kitchen where Ray had sat 2.5 weeks before, and she set a file folder on the table and she opened it. Ms. Morgan, she said. Mr. Callahan, I'm going to tell you some things, and I want you to hear all of them before you react. Some of what I'm about to say is hard. Can we agree on that? Yes, Diane said. Yes, Ray said. All right. Raymond Pruitt is not the only person who's been looking for you. He is the one who found you. But there are at least 3 other men and probably 1 woman who have been working on this for the past 5 years in various ways. We have been monitoring 2 of them for over a year. We did not move on them because we did not have enough to charge them, and we did not want to tip them off. Diane nodded. 4 weeks ago, Agent Brennan continued, one of those men, a subject we were watching in eastern Arkansas, met with Raymond Pruitt at a truck stop outside of Memphis. They had coffee. They talked for 43 minutes. We had audio on the meeting. Pruitt was given an assignment. The assignment was to locate and confirm the identity of a subject in the Ashford Falls area. Pruitt was not given a name. He was given a photograph. The photograph was of you, Ms. Morgan, at what appears to be a PT, a meeting at Ridgeway Elementary. It was taken through the window of the cafeteria from the parking lot with a long lens. It is dated August of this year. Diane did not move. Pruitt, Brennan said, was not instructed to harm anyone. He was instructed to confirm the location document, the daily movements, and report back. The daily movements included Lily's school schedule, which he had compiled in detail. Why, Diane said. The working theory, Brennan said, is that Pruitt's employers were building a file that they intended to use as leverage, not against you, against Marcus Vance's appeals team. Ray looked at her. Say that again, he said. Vance has a parole hearing in March. He is almost certainly not going to make parole, but he has been working on a direct appeal for almost 2 years based on some procedural issues at his trial. That appeal is going to fail too, but it requires the prosecution to keep producing cooperation from witnesses. If the central witness in the case, Ms. Morgan, became unreachable, their argument would be that her testimony could no longer be validated and the appeal should be reconsidered. Unreachable, Dan repeated. Moved, relocated, frightened, compromised. The file Pruitt was building was not for a kidnapping, it was for a threat. A specific, credible threat directed at you through your daughter, designed to make you retract cooperation. Diane's face had gone very still. Or, Brennan said that was one theory, there was another. Which was that the people running Pruitt were not interested in the appeal at all, that they simply wanted to hurt you because Vance wanted you hurt. and that the file was being built for a later date when they could act on it without consequences to their current operations. The kitchen was silent. Agent Brennan, Ray said. Yes, Mr. Callahan. Which theory do you believe? Brennan was quiet for a moment. She turned a page in her folder. She closed the folder. I believe the second one, she said. Diane took a slow breath. She did not let it out for a long time. What changed, Ray said. What? You said you've been watching these people for over a year. You did not move on them. Something changed 3 weeks ago because 3 weeks ago, Pruitt followed Lily into a diner and wound up in a jail cell. Something in the network got impatient. Why? Brennan looked at him. Mr. Callahan, she said, you would have been a hell of an investigator. I was for a while. The answer to your question is that Marcus Vance lost an appeal 2 months ago that he had thought he was going to win. He was told by his legal team in August that the appeal was going to fail. Within 8 days of that conversation, the activity around Miss Morgan's location accelerated dramatically. The working theory is that when Vance understood he was not getting out of prison, he gave an instruction to people on the outside to stop waiting for the long game. He told them to move. So Pruitt was the first piece. Pruitt was the first piece. And because we caught him, and because he had a phone full of evidence, we have identified 2 more pieces that we are now in a position to move on. Diane spoke. 2 more pieces. 2 more men, Brennan said. 1 in Memphis, 1 in Jackson, Tennessee. Neither of them knows Pruitt has been caught. We want to pick them up this weekend. To do that, we are going to need to ask you for one thing. What? We need you to stay in Ashford Falls and continue your normal routine through the end of the week. If you leave, the network will know, and our targets may go dark. We need them to believe that Pruitt's disappearance is an isolated incident that can be managed. Diane did not answer. I understand this is an enormous thing to ask, Brennan said. What about Lily? Diane said. A deputy will be assigned to the school starting tomorrow morning. Visible, uniformed. Parked in the front lot. We have spoken to the principal. Lily will be accompanied from class to class by an aide we have already vetted. We will have an unmarked car on the street during school hours, and Mr. Callahan's associates. Brothers, Ray said. Brothers will continue their current schedule. I have been told that schedule is excellent. The schedule is excellent. Diane put her face in her hands. She kept them there for 10 full seconds. Then she took them away. I need to ask Lily, she said. Agent Brennan blinked. Excuse me. I need to ask Lily, Diane repeated. She is 6 years old, and this is her life, and I am not going to make a decision about her body and her safety without asking her. You can sit here, Ray can sit here. I'll go get her. Ms. Morgan. Diane, that is not how we usually. I know it's not, Diane said, but it's how we do it. She went upstairs. Ray and Agent Brennan sat in silence for 90 seconds. Brennan said, Mr. Callahan, off the record. Off the record. The mother makes the call in situations like this. The mother, Ray said, has taught me a thing or two about what a child can handle if you stop deciding for her. I'd let her play this one out. All right. Footsteps on the stairs. Diane came down with Lily beside her. Lily was holding her notebook. Lily, honey, Diane said, sitting. This is Agent Brennan. She works for the FBI. She has a question to ask us. I want you to hear it, and I want to know what you think. Lily looked at Agent Brennan. Ma'am, Lily said, I'm going to ask my questions after you ask yours. Is that okay? Agent Brennan looked at Diane. Yes, she said carefully. That's okay. Brennan explained. She used smaller words than she had used before, But she did not lie, and she did not leave out the pieces that mattered. She said that there were bad men, and there were more of them than they had thought, and they wanted to catch them. And to catch them, they needed Lily and her mom to stay in town for a few more days and go to school and come home like nothing was wrong, while the police watched from close by. Lily listened. When Brennan finished, Lily did not answer right away. She opened her notebook. She turned to a specific page. She looked at it. She closed it. Then she said, "If we run, the bad men will find somebody else's mom to scare." The kitchen was silent. "Sweetheart," Diane said. "That's what would happen, right?" Lily said to Brennan. Brennan said. She paused. "Potentially, yes." "Then we can't run," Lily said, "because if we run, another kid will come home from school, and there will be a man behind her for 6 blocks, and that kid might not have a diner." Ray pressed his thumb into the bridge of his nose. Diane was looking at her daughter the way a woman looks at a child she has raised and is now meeting for the first time. "Lily," she said. "I know it's scary, Mom," Lily said. "I know, but I already met the scary part. I'm not meeting it again. I just already know what it is. And Mr. Ray is here, and Mr. Gus, and Mr. Walt, and the police. We are not alone. We have never been as not alone as we are right now." Agent Brennan did something then that Ray would not have predicted. She took off her glasses. She pressed her fingertips against her eyes for 1 second. She put her glasses back on. "Lily Morgan," she said, and her voice was a careful and professional shade of wrecked. "I have been doing this job for 19 years. I would like to shake your hand." Lily stuck out her hand with the total composure of a person who had been shaking hands her whole life. Brennan shook it. "We stay," Diane said. "We stay," Lily said. "We stay," Ray said. And on Bellflower Lane, in a kitchen that smelled faintly of the cornbread Diane had made for dinner, and that no one had yet touched, a 6-year-old girl closed her notebook, set it on the kitchen table, and went to put on her pajamas. The weekend came. Agent Brennan's people picked up the Memphis man on Friday night, the Jackson man on Saturday afternoon. Both of them tried to call the same number when they were arrested. Neither of them got through. The number had been disconnected at 5 o'clock Saturday morning, which meant someone had known, which meant the network had a fourth person. On Sunday at 2 in the morning, Ray Callahan was parked in his chapter-issued pickup truck at the corner of Bellflower and Sycamore, and he saw headlights turn onto Bellflower 4 blocks down that did not belong to any vehicle he recognized. He picked up his radio. "Gus." "Yeah." "Vehicle, silver sedan, coming up Bellflower from the south. I don't know it." "I don't know it either." "Walt." "Copy. Go to the back of the house. Now." "Moving." "Diane." The phone rang once in the Morgan house before Diane picked it up. "Ray?" "Diane, get Lily. Get into the bathroom. Lock the door. Stay on the floor. Do it now." The silver sedan slowed as it approached the Morgan house. Ray put the truck in gear. The sedan stopped. A door opened, and the long night began. The man who got out of the silver sedan was not tall. He was compact, maybe 5'8", and he moved the way a person moves when they have done this kind of thing before and they want the doing of it to be quick. He was wearing dark clothes. He had something in his right hand that in the amber of the street light looked like a small crowbar, but that Ray understood with the part of his brain that had been trained a long time ago to read objects across distance in the dark was a pry bar with a hooked end. He did not go to the front door. He went around the side of the house toward the kitchen window, the one with the bird feeder outside it. Ray was out of his truck before the sedan's door had fully closed. He did not run. He walked. He walked the way he had been trained to walk in Iraq, The way you walk when you do not want the sound of your boots to tell a man anything about you before the man sees you. His hand went to the inside pocket of his vest. Not for a weapon. Ray Callahan did not carry a weapon anymore and had not for 15 years. His hand went to the flashlight he had clipped there, a heavy aluminum one from the chapter supply, and he did not turn it on. The radio clipped to his belt crackled once low. Walt's voice. "Back corner. I have eyes." "Hold," Ray said. The man at the side of the house had reached the kitchen window. He lifted the pry bar. He set the hook under the edge of the aluminum storm frame. Ray was 10 feet behind him. "Sir," Ray said, quiet, conversational, almost friendly. "That's not your house," the man spun. In the amber light, Ray saw his face for about half a second. Late 30s, a beard. Something familiar in the set of the eyes that Ray did not place until later. The man registered Ray. He registered Ray's size. He looked past Ray toward the street and then toward the back of the yard, and then his whole body did the calculation that men in his line of work do in these moments, which was whether to run or to swing. He swung. The pry bar came up fast and at an angle that would have caught Ray on the side of the neck if Ray had not been standing exactly where he was standing, which was half a step further back than the man had estimated. Ray stepped inside the swing. He put his left forearm against the man's wrist and his right hand flat against the man's chest, and he drove forward just once, a single short compression of his 230 pounds, and the man went off his feet and into the side of the house with a sound that was not loud, but that rearranged several things about the man's ability to continue the evening. The pry bar clattered. Ray put his boot on the man's forearm. Not hard, just present the way you pin a snake without killing it. "Walt." "Coming." Walt Henderson, 82 years old, came around the corner of the house at a speed that would have astonished anyone who had not seen him do it before. He had a roll of duct tape in one hand. He had taken it from a supply that the chapter kept in all of its vehicles, because at Walt's age, a roll of duct tape was the most versatile tool a man could carry. Ray got the man face down. Walt taped his wrists behind him. Ray patted him down. There was no weapon beyond the pry bar, but there was a small folding knife in the right front pocket of his jeans and a cell phone and a set of keys and a folded piece of paper that Ray put into his own vest pocket without looking at. "Gus," Ray said into his radio. "Ray." "Call Brooks. We have one in custody. Tell him I need a unit at the Morgan residence." Quiet. Moving. Inside the house, the bathroom door opened. Diane came out with Lily behind her. Diane was holding a baseball bat, a wooden one, the kind that used to sit in the corner by the back door. Ray had not known she kept a bat by the back door. He filed this information away with a small private satisfaction. "It's clear," he called through the open kitchen window. "Stay inside, lock the front door. Brooks is on his way." "Are you hurt?" Diane called back. "No." "Is he?" "Only his pride." Lily's small voice from behind Diane. "Mr. Ray?" "I'm here, honey." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Lily. Everything's fine. Stay with your mom." "Okay." Deputy Brooks arrived 4 minutes later. He had been 2 streets over. The man in the dark clothes was loaded into the back of a patrol car for the second time in 3 weeks that the neighborhood had seen such a thing. The pry bar, the knife, the phone, and the folded piece of paper were bagged. Crime scene techs would arrive in the morning. A second deputy was posted at the end of the street for the rest of the night. Ray sat at Diane's kitchen table at 4 in the morning with a cup of coffee he had not asked for and did not want, but was drinking anyway because Diane had made it and her hands had needed something to do. He took the folded piece of paper out of his vest. He opened it. It was a list, names and addresses, handwritten. 6 entries. The first entry was Diane Morgan Bellflower Lane. The second entry was Lily Morgan Ridgeway Elementary School. The third, fourth, fifth, and sixth entries were names Ray did not recognize. He would learn later that 3 of them were women who had also testified against Marcus Vance at various points in the past decade, and that the 4th was a federal prosecutor in St. Louis. At the bottom of the list in a different hand were 2 words, all by March. Ray looked at the list for a long time. Diane looked at it over his shoulder. March, she said. The parole hearing, Ray said. He gave the order from inside. He gave the order from inside. Jesus. Yeah. The front door opened. It was Agent Brennan. Brooks had called her, and she had driven down from Knoxville in a little over an hour, which meant she had driven fast. She took the list. She read it. She looked up. Diane, she said, we are going to have to talk about moving you for real this time. Not witness relocation, just for the next 2 weeks. A safe house, in the state, nothing permanent. Diane looked at her. Then she looked at Ray. Then she looked at the wall where a 6th grade art project Lily had brought home the week before was pinned up, a drawing of an orca breaching in a moonlit sea. 2 weeks, Diane said, 2 weeks, through the trial, through the expected arrest of the remaining network members, through the end of the exposure window. We can do 2 weeks, Diane said. Mr. Callahan, Brennan said. I didn't. I'd like to ask the chapter to coordinate with us on transport and perimeter at the safe house. Ray looked at her. You asking on the record? I'm asking on the record, with everything that entails. Ray nodded slowly. I'll call Rickon. Consider it done. Brennan exhaled. Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank the man we just put in the back of that car. He did us a favor. We were going to find the rest of them eventually. He just sped it up. Brennan looked down at the list. All by March, she read. I'll tell you, Mr. Callahan, when this is over, I'm going to sleep for a week. Join the club, Ray said. The safe house was a 2-bedroom cabin on 21 acres of pasture outside the town of Spring Hollow, about 90 minutes east of Ashford Falls. It belonged to the brother of a U.S. Marshal who had let the FBI use it before. The driveway was a 1/4 mile long. The pasture was fenced. There were no neighbors for 3/4 of a mile in any direction. It had a fireplace, a kitchen with a gas stove, and a small library of paperback novels that the Marshal's brother had inherited from his mother, most of which were Westerns. Diane and Lily moved in on a Monday morning. Ray drove the lead vehicle. The chapter drove 2 more. They swept the cabin. They set up a rotation. They had a man at the top of the driveway at all times and a man behind the cabin. Ray slept in the truck. So did everyone else. The cabin was for Diane and Lily. Lily did her schoolwork by phone with her teacher. Her teacher, a woman named Mrs. Aldry, who Diane had taught alongside for 6 years, had cried when Diane had called her and explained as much as she could. Then Mrs. Aldry had stopped crying and she had said, "Send me the worksheets. I will make sure she does not fall behind." And she had every day for 11 days. On the 6th day, Lily came out of her bedroom holding her notebook. "Mom," she said, "I finished it." "Finished what, Bug?" "My statement for court." Diane looked up from her coffee. Ray was at the kitchen table fixing the hinge of a cabinet that had been loose when they arrived. "Okay," Diane said carefully. "Do you want us to look at it? I want Mr. Ray to listen to me read it, to see if it sounds right." Ray put the screwdriver down. "Go ahead, honey." Lily stood at the end of the kitchen table. She held the notebook. She looked at the first page, and she read in a voice that was steady and clear, and so painfully composed that Ray felt his eyes go hot in a way they had not gone hot in about 15 years. "My name is Lily Morgan. I am 6 years old. I live in Ashford Falls, Tennessee with my mom. On September 19th, I was walking home from school. I saw a man I did not know. He had been at my bus stop that morning. He followed me for 6 blocks. I was scared. I did not run because my mom says that if you run, people can catch you faster. I walked. I walked into a diner called Gus's Corner. There was a man there. His name is Mr. Ray Callahan. I did not know him, but he looked like a person I could trust. I put my arms around his leg and I asked him not to let go. He did not let go. He has not let go since. The man who followed me went to jail, but other men wanted to do what he wanted to do. They wanted to make my mom afraid. They wanted to make me afraid. They did not know that I have a lot of people. My mom, Mr. Ray, Mr. Gus, Mr. Walt, Deputy Brooks, Agent Brennan, Mrs. Aldry, Meg at the diner. All of these people looked out for me. I am going to tell you everything I remember about the man who followed me. I am going to tell you because it is true, and because other children deserve to not be followed, and because I am not afraid anymore because fear does not get to live in my house. My mom told me that. She told me fear can knock on the door, but it does not get to come in and sit down. Thank you for listening. She closed the notebook. Ray did not trust his voice for a moment. Lily, he said finally, that's exactly right. You're not going to change anything. No, honey, not one word. Diane was crying quietly at the table. She made no effort to hide it. Lily went to her and put her small arms around her mother's neck and said, "It's okay, Mom. It's okay." "I know," Diane said. "I know, Bug." On the 12th day, Brennan called. "Diane," she said, "we've got the fourth one, Waco, Texas. Picked him up at a motel. He had the list in his wallet. We have everyone. 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 You can come home." Diane sat down on the couch in the cabin and did not say anything for a full minute. "Diane, I'm here. I know this has been—" "Everyone," Diane said again. "Everyone." "Okay," Diane said. "Okay." The trial of Raymond Pruitt began on the second Monday of November. It was held in the federal courthouse in Knoxville. The judge was a woman in her 60s named Harriet Whitcomb, who had a reputation for running a tight courtroom and for not tolerating theatrics. Pruitt's attorney, Alvin Kretzer, had filed 3 pretrial motions to suppress the evidence from Pruitt's phone, and all 3 had been denied. On the 4th day of the trial, Lily Morgan took the stand. She wore a blue dress. Her hair was in 2 braids. Diane had braided them that morning in the hotel room where they had stayed the night before, and her fingers had shaken through the first one and steadied on the second. Ray had been in the hotel lobby. He had not slept. He had worn a clean shirt. He was not required to wear a tie. He had put on a tie anyway. He sat in the second row behind the prosecution. Beside him sat Diane. Beside her sat Gus Thornton and Walt Henderson in clean shirts and clean jeans and their vests folded on their laps in the single act of quiet deference that any of them was willing to make. Behind them sat 4 more members of the Ashford Falls chapter, also in clean clothes. Behind them sat Mrs. Aldry, the teacher, Meg, the waitress, Deputy Brooks, and a man Ray did not recognize who would later turn out to be the 4th grade principal of Ridgeway Elementary. Pruitt sat at the defense table with his lawyer. He did not look at Lily as she walked to the stand. This had been arranged in advance. Judge Whitcomb had agreed that the witness was a minor and that direct line of sight between the defendant and the witness would be blocked by a small screen. Pruitt could hear Lily's testimony. He could not see her, and she could not see him. The prosecutor, a woman named Karen Vasquez, took Lily through the testimony gently, one question at a time. Lily answered each question in the same steady voice. she had used to read her statement in the cabin kitchen. She did not refer to her notebook. She did not need to. She had the entire thing memorized. After 23 minutes, the prosecutor said, "Thank you, Lily. I have no further questions." "Your Honor, the witness is yours." The defense rose. "Ms. Morgan," Kretzer said, "may I call you Lily?" "Yes, sir." "Lily, you said the man followed you for 6 blocks. Is that exact?" "Oh, yes, sir." "You counted." "I counted." "You were scared." "Yes, sir." When people are scared, sometimes they see things that aren't there. Sometimes they think they see someone when they actually don't. Is it possible that this man you saw was a different man than my client? No, sir. How do you know? Because his shoelaces didn't match. One was brown and one was dark gray. I noticed it at the bus stop in the morning. I noticed it again on Sycamore Street in the afternoon. I noticed it when he came into the diner. The shoelaces were the same shoelaces. Kretzer paused. "Lily," he said, "someone could have changed their shoelaces." "Yes, sir, but they didn't." "How do you know?" "Because the right shoelace had a little fray at the end, just a small one. I noticed it in the morning. It was still there in the afternoon. And it was there when he sat down at the counter. It was the same shoelace. That means it was the same man." There was a long pause. "No further questions," Kretzer said. Judge Whitcomb looked at Lily. "Young lady," she said, "you may step down." Lily looked at her. "Ma'am," she said, "may I say one more thing?" "Within reason." "It's just a thank you." Judge Whitcomb looked at the prosecutor. Vasquez nodded. "Go ahead," Whitcomb said. Lily turned her head toward the gallery. "Thank you," she said, to no one in particular and to everyone in the room. "Thank you for believing me. Thank you to the policeman. Thank you to the lawyer lady. Thank you to my teacher. Thank you to my mom. Thank you to Mr. Ray. Thank you to all of Mr. Ray's friends in the back. Thank you to Mrs. Meg and Mr. Gus. And thank you to the judge lady, because you are in charge of making sure it is fair." Judge Whitcomb's face did a small thing that Ray would not have expected of her based on her reputation. "Ms. Morgan," she said, "the thanks are received. You may step down." Lily walked off the stand. She came down the aisle. She passed the prosecution table. She passed the first row. She came to where her mother was sitting. Diane opened her arms, but Lily did not stop at Diane. She walked one more step. She climbed into Ray Callahan's lap. She put her head against his shoulder. And she said in a voice so quiet that only the first row could hear it, "I did it." "You did it," Ray said. "It was true. It was true. I told it. You told it. Can we get pie now?" Ray let out a sound that was half a laugh and half something else. He could not have told anyone which half was which. "Yeah," he said, "we can get pie." Raymond Pruitt was found guilty of 3 counts of stalking a minor and 2 counts of criminal conspiracy on the Thursday of the trial's second week. Judge Whitcomb sentenced him to 28 years in federal prison, the maximum allowable under the statute. And she did it with a short additional statement on the record about the particular cruelty of the crimes and about her confidence that the defendant would not be missed in any community in which he had previously resided. Marcus Vance was charged on the basis of the list found in the attacker's pocket and the subsequent cooperation of 2 of the arrested network members with conspiracy to commit obstruction of justice and conspiracy to intimidate a federal witness. The charges were filed in the Southern District of Illinois, where his original conviction had been handed down. Vance had 50 years remaining on his existing sentence. The new charges added 20 more. He was not going to be released in his lifetime. The news ran for about 4 days in the regional papers, and then for one cycle on a national network. Agent Brennan was mentioned. Deputy Brooks was mentioned. The Ashford Falls Sheriff's Office was mentioned. The Ashford Falls chapter of the Hells Angels was mentioned in a single carefully worded paragraph in a Knoxville paper which referred to them as a group of local residents who provided informal community security during the weeks leading up to the trial. The chapter framed a copy of that paragraph and hung it in the meeting room at the chapter house. Rickon made a speech about it that was mostly insults directed at the newspaper, and the chapter drank coffee and laughed and then changed the subject. Ray went back to the diner. He went on Tuesday. He sat on his usual stool. Meg poured his coffee without being asked. The old men were in the corner booth. The hardware store was doing its slow business across the street. The afternoon light was different than it had been in September, paler with the first of the November gray moving through it, but the angles were the same. The bell above the door rang. Ray looked up. Lily came in. She was wearing a coat now. Diane was behind her. Lily dropped her backpack on the stool next to Ray and climbed up. "Hi," she said. "Hi." "Mrs. Aldry said I could do extra credit on my Dolphin project and turn it into a report on pod behavior. I think I'm going to do a comparison between orcas and bottlenose dolphins." Ambitious. I know. Diane sat on Lily's other side. Meg was already bringing 3 mugs. Black for Ray, coffee with cream, and 2 sugars for Diane. Hot chocolate with marshmallows for Lily. Nobody had to ask anymore. "How was school, Bug?" Diane said. "Fine. Fine. Priya said her dad took her to see a biker rally." "Did he now?" "She said bikers aren't actually scary. She said I was right. I told her I already knew that." Mm-hmm. The diner was warm. The coffee was good. Outside, the leaves on the maple across the street had mostly fallen, and the last few were hanging on in the wind with the particular stubbornness that the last leaves always show. "Ray," Diane said. "Yeah." "I was thinking, Thanksgiving is in 10 days. I was going to roast a turkey. I always roast a turkey. Lily and I usually eat half of it and then feed the rest of it to the neighbors. I was wondering if you'd like to join us." Ray looked at his coffee. He had not had a Thanksgiving dinner in a house since 2009. "If it's too much," Diane said, "I completely understand. I know you." "I'd like that," Ray said. Diane looked at him. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "Okay. Can I ask for one thing?" "Of course." "Can I bring Gus and Walt? They don't have anyone either, and Gus makes a pie that my mother used to say was better than hers, which is the highest praise I have ever heard her give another human being." Diane looked at him for a long moment, and then she laughed. Really laughed. The kind of laugh that Ray had not heard her make in the 2.5 months he had known her, and that he realized she probably had not made much in the 7 years before that either. "Yes," she said. "Bring Gus. Bring Walt. Bring the entire chapter if you want. I have a very big turkey." "Just Gus and Walt." "Just Gus and Walt." "Okay." Lily was eating her snickerdoodle. She broke off a piece. She held it out to Ray without looking at him. He took it. "Ray," she said. "Yeah." "Is it okay if I tell people you're my friend?" "You already told Priya." "Yeah, but I mean in general, like at school, like if someone asks who the man in the pictures is." "What pictures?" "Mom took one at the courthouse. With all of us. It's on the fridge." Ray looked at Diane. "It is," Diane said. "I didn't tell you, but it is." Ray looked at his coffee for a moment. "Yeah," he said to Lily. "That's okay." "Okay." She ate her cookie. She drank her hot chocolate. She went back to talking about bottlenose dolphins. And Ray Callahan sat at the counter of Gus's Corner Diner on a Tuesday afternoon in Ashford Falls, Tennessee, and listened. On Thanksgiving Day, he arrived at Diane's house at 2 in the afternoon. Gus came with him. Walt came in his own truck because Walt did not ride with anyone. Ray wore a clean shirt. Gus wore a sweater that his late wife had given him 22 years ago. Walt wore a flannel shirt that had been in the back of his closet so long that Ray had never seen it before. Lily opened the door. She was wearing a dress with turkeys on it. She was very serious. "Welcome," she said. "Thank you," Ray said. "We have turkey." "I heard. And also I made the napkins." "The napkins." "Mom said I could fold them. I watched a video. They look like little fans." "Show me." She showed him. The napkins looked like little fans. Diane was in the kitchen. The house smelled like rosemary and butter. There was a record playing, somewhere old country, Patsy Cline, by the sound of it. Gus handed Diane his pie. Walt handed her a bottle of wine that he had been saving since the millennium, which he did not mention to her, but which he did mention to Ray later in the evening with a certain quiet pride. They ate at 4 o'clock. Ray sat at the foot of the table because Lily had assigned seats on index cards, and his card had said, "Head of the other end." He did not know what to do with being assigned that seat. He sat in it anyway. He carved the turkey because Diane had asked him to, and he had not carved a turkey in 16 years, and he had to clear his throat twice while he was doing it. Nobody said anything about the clearing of the throat. That was the kind of table it was. After dinner, Lily brought out a piece of paper. "I have to read something," she said. "But Diane said you don't have to." "I want to." She stood at the end of the table. "Mrs. Aldry said we were supposed to write what we were thankful for. We had to read them at school, but I wrote two. I read one at school. This one I am reading here." She looked at her paper. "I am thankful for my mom, who is the whole rest of the world. I am thankful for Mrs. Aldry, who is my teacher. I am thankful for Priya, who is my best friend. I am thankful for the police officers who helped us. I am thankful for Agent Brennan. I am thankful for Mr. Gus's diner and Mrs. Meg's hot chocolate and the judge lady who was in charge of fare. I am thankful for all of Mr. Ray's brothers who watched our house, even though I only met two of them, Mr. Walt and Mr. Gus, because I am little and they wanted me to sleep. I am thankful that bad men went to jail and cannot follow anybody anymore. And I am thankful for Mr. Ray, because on the day I was scared, I ran into a diner and he was sitting there and he did not know me. And I put my arms around his leg and I asked him not to let go. And he did not let go. He has not let go yet. And I do not think he is going to. That is what I am thankful for. She folded the paper. She sat down. The room was very quiet. Gus Thornton, who had been in the Navy and who had seen the coast of the South China Sea from the deck of a destroyer in the late 60s, and who had buried a wife and who had run a diner for 31 years without ever once complaining about his feet, took a napkin off his lap and pressed it to his eye. Walt Henderson looked at the ceiling. Diane reached across the table and took Lily's hand. Ray sat very still. He could not speak for a moment. "Lily," he said finally, "yeah, I'm not letting go." "I know. I want to make sure you know." "I know, Mr. Ray. You don't have to keep saying it." "Okay. But you can if you want to." He almost laughed. "Okay." They ate pie. Walt opened his bottle of wine. Gus told a story about his wife that Ray had never heard him tell before, in which she had once met a governor of Tennessee at a parade and had not been impressed. Diane laughed so hard she had to put her glass down. Lily fell asleep on the couch during the telling of the story, which was a sign that she had trusted the room completely, because Lily Morgan did not fall asleep on couches in rooms she did not trust. Ray carried her upstairs. He did it carefully. He had not carried a sleeping child in a long time, her head tucked into his shoulder as if it had been there 1,000 times before. Her left hand came up in her sleep and gripped the fabric of his shirt. He laid her down on her bed. Diane was in the doorway. He pulled the blanket up over Lily. He tucked the edges the way his mother had once taught him to tuck edges, because that is the kind of thing you remember when a child is asleep in front of you. He stepped back. He turned. Diane was looking at him in the hallway light. "Ray," she said very quietly. "Yeah." "Come downstairs. Gus and Walt are waiting. They want to finish the wine." "Okay." "And Ray." "Yeah. I'm really glad you came today." He looked at her. He thought of about 11 different things to say. What came out was "me too." They went downstairs. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday in December, Ray Callahan sat at the counter of Gus's Corner Diner with snow falling outside the front window for the first time that year. Lily was beside him. Tannen was on Lily's other side. Meg had just brought 3 mugs. Gus was in the kitchen arguing with the dishwasher about something neither of them seemed particularly invested in. Walt was in the corner booth with the other old men talking about a bridge game from 1987 that none of them remembered quite the same way. Ray's phone buzzed on the counter. It was a number he did not recognize. He answered anyway. "Mr. Callahan." "Speaking." "This is Caroline Pierce. I'm with the Tennessee Coalition for Child Safety. I'm calling to ask if you would be willing to attend an event in March, a gala fundraiser. We are establishing a new statewide initiative for child endangerment response, and we would like to name it after." "Ma'am," Ray said. "Yes. I appreciate the call, but I'm not the right person. The right person is 6 years old, and she is sitting next to me. You want to name it after somebody, you name it after her. But you ask her first, and you ask her mother first before that." There was a pause on the line. "Mr. Callahan." "Yes." "That is the first time anyone has ever told me that in a phone call. I suspect it won't be the last. May I call you back with a different question?" "You may." "Thank you." He hung up. Lily looked at him. "What was that?" she said. "A lady wants to name a child safety program." "After who?" "She was going to suggest me. I suggested you." Lily thought about that. She turned her mug in her hands. She looked out the window at the snow. "Can we call it something else?" she said finally. "Not after me. I don't want it named after me." "Why not Honey?" Diane said. "Because," Lily said, "it's not just about me. It's about all the kids who run into diners and all the people who don't let go. I think it should have a name that means that." Ray looked at her. "What name?" he said. Lily thought for a moment. "Don't let go," she said. "That's what I said in the diner. I said, please don't let go. And he didn't, so maybe the name is Don't Let Go." Diane put a hand over her mouth. Ray looked at his coffee. "Lily." "Yeah, that is a good name for a program." "Okay. When the lady calls back, I'll tell her." "Okay." The snow kept falling outside. The bell above the door rang as someone came in for a takeout order. Meg was wiping the counter. Walt said something in the corner booth that made the other old men laugh. Gus came out of the kitchen with a plate of pie for a woman 2 stools down. Ray Callahan sat at the counter of Gus's Corner Diner on a Tuesday afternoon in December, and beside him sat a woman he had come to love in a way he did not have a name for and did not need a name for, and beside her sat a child who had run into a diner on a Tuesday in September and who had decided with the unerring and total clarity of a 6-year-old that he was the right person. He had not been the right person in a long time. He was the right person now. The afternoon light came through the window, pale and diffused through the snow, and it fell across the counter and across 3 mugs and across a small silver unicorn clip hanging off the zipper of a navy blue backpack that was leaning against the leg of a stool. And Ray Callahan, 57 years old road captain, Hell's Angels, Ashford Falls, Chapter 2 tours. 15 years of walls felt under his ribs in the place that had cracked open on a September afternoon and had been quietly reknitting itself ever since, a warmth that he recognized after a moment of looking for the name of it as the particular warmth of having come home. He did not tell anyone that is what it was. He did not have to. Lily broke off a piece of her snickerdoodle. She handed it to him without looking. He took it. They sat. The snow fell, the bell above the door rang, and the afternoon went on.